What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. We are talking about the 2022 NFL Draft today, and we're going to kick it off with the AFC North. So the plan is I'm going to talk about the top 100 picks. So I'll go through team by team in the AFC North and talk about who I think they might be able to take in the top 100 or some not necessarily a mock draft because I can't stand mock drafts. I mean, I like to look at them, but they are always completely wrong. But I'm going to put a few guys out there that I think would fit, a team's needs, but also, could be maybe an optimistic pick or maybe somebody that we can see go a little higher than expected. I'll also put timestamps in the video if you want to jump to your favorite team in the AFC North and you don't want to hear me talk about other teams. So whatever it is, make sure you click like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. All right, let's just get to it. All right, so when we looked at the AFC North last year, the division winner was the Cincinnati Bengals, who made it to the Super Bowl, surprised a lot of people. They went 10-7. Second place was the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-7-1, who made the playoffs in a wild card before getting destroyed by the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw the Ravens just miss out at 8-9, and we saw the Browns in the basement at 8-9 as well. So let's go ahead and start worst from first. We'll start with the Cleveland Browns. They do not have a first-round pick because they traded it for Deshaun Watson. So their first pick in the NFL draft is the 44th overall pick in the second round. When I look at the Cleveland Browns, some needs that I think they have is, interior defensive line, edge, and receiver, which is a lot of the themes I'm going with for these picks. Okay, so at 44, I think two guys that make a lot of sense is that receiver position. A guy like Sky Moore who can just get open, man. I think he's that next huge Mac guy who really breaks out, does a lot of big things. And another guy from a bigger school is John Dotson from Penn State. We saw him have a lot of production at Penn State over the years. I feel like he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit because, he's not a super sexy name and he's not one of those top 5 receivers. But I think he's a guy that can be very productive from day one. Another guy that I think's possible at that 44th pick because he might slide a little bit due to injury is David Njoku. They don't have Jadeveon Clowney locked up yet. I think he's a guy who clearly, is injured right now. But I think he'd be a really long-term solution there opposite of Myles Garrett. And that might be a fun one for the Cleveland Browns to kind of swing for the fences because this might be a little bit of a lost year depending on how long Deshaun Watson is suspended. The next pick the Cleveland Browns have is the 78th overall pick. This one I put some interior defensive linemen here. So Perion Winfrey, defensive tackle from Oklahoma, I think would make a lot of sense here. And Logan Hall, who's a guy that I see all over the board as far as big boards go. Some people really, really like him. I've seen some big boards have him within the top 30 players in the draft. Some people have him a little bit lower for the simple fact that he's a pretty undersized defensive tackle. But there's also another undersized defensive tackle who's pretty good in the NFL. His name is Aaron Donald. Now, Logan Hall is a lot smaller than Aaron Donald, but you get the picture I'm trying to paint here. And the last pick the Cleveland Browns have within the top 100 is the 99th overall pick. Here, I went back to edge a little bit, and I thought Kingsley and Nagbar, I think is how you say it, or Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati. I thought these two guys aren't. I mean, I think Myjai Sanders can be a little bit more of a game wrecker. I think Kingsley is a little bit more of a safer pick. A guy who, didn't run an impressive 40, but we could see maybe even move into, maybe like a 3 tech, something like that, if he puts on a little bit of size since he doesn't have the speed to get around the edge. But that's just kind of what I'm feeling for the Cleveland Browns. So let's go ahead and jump to the Baltimore Ravens. The weaknesses that I saw was interior offensive line, interior defensive line, edge, corner, and linebacker. They did help with that interior defensive line by just re-signing Calais Campbell last night. So I think that's going to help them big time. But their first pick is the 14th overall pick. A guy that just feels like he'd be a Raven is Jordan Davis, right? So, they had Haglodi Nada for so long. I think Jordan Davis is that kind of like freaky sort of athlete. We know that sometimes Baltimore likes to almost run like 2 nose tackles. They like to let their linebackers roam free and it just a little bit more pressure. I think this guy's going to be a do-it-all kind of guy at the next level. Another guy that I put down was Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher from Florida State, or a Devin Lloyd. I'm not sure how they're really feeling about that off-ball linebacker position. I don't think Devin Lloyd would land there, but I also, Baltimore always likes versatility, and I think Devin Lloyd can be that kind of guy. Their next pick is the 45th overall pick, and I saw Kaiir Elam being a possibility here, or Andrew Booth Jr. Both of them corners. Kair's from Florida, Andrew Booth Jr. is from Clemson. So I think Kaiir is a Baltimore kind of guy. He's physical, he's big, he's nasty. Andrew Booth's had some moments of brilliance, and he's had some moments where he's gotten scorched. So he's a little bit more of a project, which they might be willing to roll the dice on that because they still have Marcus Peters come back from injury. So maybe it gives Booth a year to play here and there, but kind of get his feet underneath him. The next pick the Cleveland Browns have is the 76th overall pick. If they didn't get, an interior defensive lineman, I thought Travis Jones might be another guy. Again, a huge 340 pound nose tackle from Connecticut. I think he'd make a lot of sense, but I also think a Christian Harris would make sense. And he's another one of those guys who's bounced around on boards. Some people don't even have him in their top, 8 linebackers. Some people have him in the top 40 players in the draft. So that's going to be an interesting one. He's had flashes, but he hasn't been consistent in Alabama. And the last pick the Ravens have in the top 100 is the 100th overall pick. And a guy who might be one of those, guys where you're like, man, how'd they fall so far, is a Troy Anderson, linebacker from Montana. Again, I think that can help. He can be a special teamer from day one. But I think he's a guy who can produce at a high level. And then the other one, if they want to help shore up that offensive line, is a Cole Strange, which is a guard from Chattanooga. He's a guy who's really productive at Chattanooga. Obviously a lower competition level, but his PFF grade was like 87 or 88. I can't remember off the top of my head. So he had a very successful year. And I think he's a guy who can kind of plug and play and also bounce around a little bit and showed versatility on the offensive line. The next team we're going to talk about is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have obviously the glaring need at quarterback, wide receiver, strong safety, corner, interior defensive line, and edge. At 20, I don't think it's any secret. Everybody in the world knows they want Malik Willis. So if he would somehow fall to 20, or, within maybe that 14, 15 range, you could see him trade up. But with the New Orleans Saints loading up on picks, it doesn't seem like Malik Willis is really in their cards. Another guy that I put down was Chris Olave. They like Ohio State receivers, right? We saw them go ahead and snag Santonio Holmes quite a few years ago. So I think Chris Olave is a guy who is ready to go right away. Pretty established route runner, really ran a pretty fast 40, a little faster than I thought it was going to be. And then the last guy is the Steelers could not stop the run last year, which was surprising. If you've watched the Steelers over the past 2-3 decades, maybe forever, they've always been stout against the run. And last year they were getting gashed. Cam Hayward was the only guy out there on the defensive line who was consistent. They lost to Lou. Stephon Tuitt's, tragic brother passed away. So he was out last year, but Jordan Davis, I think, would make a lot of sense as a potential Lou replacement. Cam's 32 years old now. So I think that would make a little bit of sense. At 52, this is one of those guys where it just feels like if he's there at 52, it's just classic Steeler, which is Sky Moore. We know the Pittsburgh Steelers love small school receivers, and Sky Moore just feels like that guy. It feels like it's just one of those picks where you're just like, it makes too much sense. I don't think he'll be there at 52. I think he'll get taken beforehand, but it feels like that could be a pick. Two more receivers that I think Pittsburgh's shown a lot of interest in is George Pickens, who a lot of people think might be like, a huge steal in this year's draft. Dude's fought a lot of injuries. We saw, what he did against Daxton Hill on run blocking. He's a guy who can go up and get it. He's just a guy who's got to stay healthy, but he has, so much potential. Another guy who I don't love is Justin Ross. They have shown interest in him. They've met with him. They've talked to him. So I think Justin Ross could be a target there because I do think they need to, second round receivers for the Pittsburgh Steelers is a thing. It always has been. So I just think Justin Ross could help fill up that receiver room. But I think there's better value elsewhere personally. And then the last pick the Steelers have within the top 100 is the 84th overall pick. And a guy who feels like maybe if they would somehow land a Tyrann Mathieu, who's not going to be a long-term answer, I think this guy could help out there, which is Lewis Cien, which is the safety from Georgia. He's a big, mean, physical, hard-hitting safety, which would be a box safety to play opposite of Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he's a guy who would make a lot of sense there. I think even if they re-sign Terrell Edmonds, I think that would make a lot of sense too. But I do like Lewis Cien. And then another guy I put down was Marcus Jones, which is an undersized corner from Houston. He's probably the best kick returner, punt returner in this year's draft. They did sign Gunner, but he's a guy who I think, kind of fits that Mike Hilton slot corner kind of role. They lost last year, that they really missed last year. But that's what I'm kind of feeling for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then the division winner last year, which was the Cincinnati Bengals. Their needs, I put linebacker, corner, defensive line, interior offensive line, and tight end. So the Bengals had the 31st overall pick. I think Zion Johnson would make a lot of sense here. I think he's a mean mauler. He's a big, strong guy. I think he's ready to go straight from the draft from Boston College. I think Trent McDuffie would make some sense. We saw Cincinnati give up some big plays in the secondary last year. McDuffie's a guy who I really don't have a great feel as far as where he's going to go in the draft. If he went in the teens, I wouldn't be that shocked. If he goes in the second round, I wouldn't be that shocked. I just don't have a great feel for him personally. Maybe I'm stupid. Probably. And then the last one is, again, if they want to kind of get a little fancy and, maybe try to follow some recipes that we've seen some of the best teams do, which is really load up on edge rusher, they can go out and get a David Ajobo, who, again, isn't going to be ready to start the year. But I think he's a guy who, we saw was one of the best edge rushers in this year's draft. Unfortunately gets injured, but that could be a guy that they maybe get and kind of, put him on the back burner, let him heal up, and maybe he's ready later in the season. The 63rd pick. I think Trey McBride makes a lot of sense here. He's pretty much undoubtedly the best tight end in this year's draft. It's not a great tight end draft, but I think Trey McBride would make a lot of sense. It is a nice safety blanket who can block down the field. Another guy I put on there was Dylan Parham, which is a guard, or Chad Moma, which is a linebacker from Wyoming. Again, these guys aren't the sexy picks like everybody that 63rd pick that I put down could be, but they make a lot of sense. And that's what great teams have, right? That you can't have all super, huge playmakers like a T. Higgins, or oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name. Jamar Chase. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. Joe Mixon. Those kind of guys are going to make the huge plays. But those are guys who, at the offensive line, the linebacker position, the tight end position, who can make plays and take a great team to that next, just that next level. Their last pick they have within the top 100 is the 95th overall pick, which I think Channing Tindall, linebacker from Georgia, would make a lot of sense. He's a guy who's, a high motor, really, really athletic, big linebacker, just kind of, flashes here and then has some plays where, he gets washed up in the run game or gets a little bit lost in the pass game. Or they could go tight end again and go ahead and get Greg Dulcich, maybe. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with names. I apologize. But I think that would make a lot of sense. We saw him make that huge 75-yard touchdown against LSU last year. He's a solid run blocker. So I think those would be some picks that make sense for the defending AFC North champions. So let me know what you guys think. I'm excited, man. The NFL draft's just right around the corner. Drop in the comments for each team, who do you think, who do you think they're going to draft and who do you want them to draft? Because I love to hear from fan bases just to know what they're thinking. But if you guys like the episode, please click like and subscribe. Help support the show, man. Just hit over 2,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time.